There we go. Everybody sees all your. Oh wow. Hold on one second. Go ahead and go figure, man. What is the deal here? Why is the Discord not showing up? Add application. Add existing. There we go. All right. Now we should be live. Everybody sees your interviews. Everybody sees, all your content that you put up there, and your boots on the ground there. And I can only do most of my stuff through the internet because I don't get to go down there very often. But we appreciate what you do, and we appreciate all the insight and all the great talks that you get with coaching staff and with the players.
Thanks for the kind words, and back at you. I appreciate you guys picking up clips. A lot of times, we'll talk during the night, and I'll say, "Hey, might want to pick up a clip of so and so, or can you grab so and so's great defensive play?" And you guys are great about that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we'll just go ahead and hop into stuff here. We've got a packed episode with so much stuff to talk about. Because I want to pick your brain because you get to go to all of the affiliates in North Carolina, and there's so much going on there. The White Sox Major League Club swept by the Tigers, lose 2-3 to the Royals and Tigers in 3 series. Absolute train wreck. Today we find out that Oscar Colas got sent back down because, from what I understand, some of the veterans are kind of aggravated with, some of the things that he's been doing, and just a tire fire. At least you get Oscar Colas back in Charlotte for the next week, huh?
Yeah, but we've got Yoki Cespedes and Jose Rodriguez who've joined the team, so it's the last homestand of the season, but it sounds like it could be an interesting one.
Yeah, and you lose Davy Garcia from the bullpen, which he's looked really good, and I was pretty, I was not that I was surprised that he's looked this good because obviously some major league service time, he's got some stuff, but he was just mowing through guys down there and looked pretty stinking good. So you got some nice starting pitching coming up here, and you get your last looks at a couple of the guys, and you want to go ahead and expound on that?
Sure. As most people who follow the White Sox prospects know, picked up Nick Nastrini from the Dodgers at the deadline, and they brought him up to Charlotte. And they also promoted Christian Mena. It's interesting. He's 20 years old, but he's put together a great track record. And so those two guys started last week, Tuesday night for Mena, and I think Nastrini on Wednesday. Neither start went well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was a real disappointment. But They've got 2 more starts in the season, including Mena tomorrow night and Nastrini Wednesday here in Charlotte, and I'll be there for both of those. And I'm hoping that maybe it was nerves or adrenaline or something the first time out, and maybe it should be much better because both are excellent pitchers. Both have had tremendous years.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun to see those guys before they trot out the rest of the crew for the rest of the homestand.
Yeah, for sure. We talked about this last year, towards the end of the year last year, how, it was more or less like 75% bullpen starts, and it was just, oh, man, that was just a tough watch. And at least there's something to watch for the last couple of weeks here in Charlotte, so that's good.
But, it was a funny thing. The guys in the press box laughed at me early in the year when I said, this could be a 500 ball club. They've got a lot of pitching for a change. And at the start of this minor league season, they really did. Jesse Schultens, Nate Fisher, Davis Martin, AJ Alexi, a couple other guys. And in fact, right before the All-Star break, they were just one or two games under 500. Then Sean Burke got hurt. Davis Martin got hurt. Jonathan Stever got hurt. They released Alexi. They called up Schultens. And I don't know if they've won 10 games since then.
Oh,
What
that's a
that
good
prompted
question.
me to do is I just couldn't go to any more nights game. I couldn't go to 6 nights games a week. It was just too much bad baseball.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I'm going to Kannapolis and Winston. And the timing was great because they started bringing in all the 2023 draft picks, Jacob Gonzalez and Harris and all those guys. And it was great baseball. Both teams played exciting baseball, just fascinating rosters filled with potential. Really exciting stuff.
I was wondering if that's what spurred that move to where you were at Charlotte every night, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm over here in Kannapolis watching these games, and then I'm going to Winston Salem tomorrow, and I was just like, I had to imagine that just mentally draining watching those Knights games every night.
You know, I live 4 blocks from the Knights ballpark. And so I go to the games early, sit behind home plate, video, go to batting practice, talk to jurors, talk to some players, go to the games. About the fifth inning, it's 9-2. They're getting beat like a drum. So I would leave. I'd just go home. I couldn't take it anymore. Last week, I actually stayed till the end of a game because the Knights, I thought, had a chance of pulling one out against Durham. And I told the guys, so this is what the end of a Knights game looks like. you know. But you're right. That's what prompted me to go to Kannapolis and Winston, and I wish I'd been doing it all year.
Yeah, I'm very happy that that you have started spreading your time around a little bit more because we get to get our eyes on get to get some insight from the players themselves and from Pat, and that's been really nice. So here in Chicago, Chris Getz got promoted, and I'm sure that you've seen the avalanche of just ridiculous Twitter nonsense of people complaining about it. Which I mean, not that it's nonsense that they're complaining about it, but I mean it's just they don't go outside the organization. They don't you know no actual real interviews. They just fire the two guys who apparently couldn't stop bickering between themselves long enough to get things done, and just promoted Chris Getz. Do you have any thoughts on that promotion?
Uh, you know, I think I'm like a lot of people. I thought, given the depth of the problems that seem to be ongoing in the clubhouse and in Chicago, that some fresh blood might have been nice. But I wish, like everyone else, I wish him well. I hope he gets things turned around. But he's got a big off season ahead of him. We're going to see really soon what he's made of. I mean, he's got to build a pitching staff, right? He's got what, 2 starters coming back, maybe. Um, I don't know, and who's he going to bring up other than Nastrini? No one else is ready.
Yeah.
So he's got to build a pitching staff in the off season. He's got to make decisions on what a surprise, right field, second base. Does he keep Moncada or does he find a way to move him? Does he keep Benintendi and try and repurpose that money for pitching? Gavin Sheets, I mean, catching. He's got a. So we're going to see what he's made of this off season.
Yeah, I think that fortunately, with him being the one guy in there, the only person who can pretty much say no to him is the chairman, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping that at least makes things a little bit more easier for him to get things done. Because, like you said, there is just a mountain of things that he has to figure out. As he's trying to retool this roster, and that's one thing that the fans have been complaining about is that the roster construction is not
Yeah.
exactly conducive to a well-rounded club, and then you hear that the quote unquote culture in the in the locker room is also not exactly working out very well, and so they started by trading a bunch of guys, then KW and Han are shown the door. So now Getz is there to um, essentially, try and pick up the pieces and hope that he's up to the task and is semi competent. You know,
Right, right.
in that role, and I guess we'll find out. Do you see any big changes in the MLB club coming in this offseason?
Well, again, it really depends on how bold Chris Getz wants to be and how much Jerry lets him be bold and daring. I mean, what if he says, "Look, I'm going to move Eloy for prospects or pitching"? And Jerry, would he say, "No, no, let's keep him"? I don't know. I would like to think he doesn't get involved to that level. But again, uh, trying to predict the 2024 club is really difficult. There are a lot of so many question marks. And let's hope one thing he doesn't do that his predecessors did is spend a lot of money on the bullpen.
Yeah, when you're spending, like a good 45% of your payroll on the bullpen, to me, like when I saw that before the season, I just thought to myself, I was like, it doesn't seem like that is a move conducive to getting the most amount of talent on a roster. And sure enough, it did not seem to pay out. Let's see here. One of Officer Doofy says you have to look at Getz as a guy who knows what needs to change and can actually do it versus an outsider who has to come in and observe first. I mean, I guess
Yep,
you could look at it that way.
that's
That's
fair.
yeah. I mean, it is, and and I'm not one of the people that are just immediately incensed that he's hired. I just, you know, I'm not saying that he couldn't be good at the job. I just would have preferred them to do a little bit more of a search, to see what else was out there. So, you know, there's that.
Well,
We'll see.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like I said, I just think we're going to see pretty quickly how up to it he is because he's got in the off season he's got a lot of decisions to make about the existing roster and a lot of decisions to make about putting 2024 team together and we'll see how bold he is and how creative he is.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and the thing is that I think that you're right that we're going to kind of see right off the bat what's going on because if you know he doesn't move on from a bunch of these guys, not a whole lot's going to change on the major league side of things as far as culture goes. So I think that there needs to at least be a pseudo large shakeup in the roster, and we'll see what comes of that.
Right.
So, do you think that there's going to be, as far as the minor league side of things goes, do you think that there will be big changes to the developmental system?
Well, one would assume no, only because that's Chris Getz's uh, responsibilities up till now, right? I mean, what's been put in place, the managers who were there, he picked them. He picked the hitting coaches, the hitting coordinators, pitching coaches, pitching coordinators. So I'm assuming it's business as usual. And again, um, I don't know if that's good or bad. But again, we're going to find out soon because, unlike the previous couple of years when there was just not much coming up through Birmingham and Charlotte, that's changed. There are a lot of guys on the cusp. And the question is, can his player development operation get guys to the major leagues and perform at or better than major league average ball players? Certainly on the pitching side, um, about a half dozen guys or more in Birmingham or Charlotte. Especially after all these trades with Kai Bush and Nastrini and Peter, along with Christian Mena. And then you got guys who have just gotten up through the system, Mason Adams and Kusin,
Yeah, and you got
Samir
Cannon too.
Kusin, Cannon. So all these guys, if and we kicked this back and forth this afternoon and had a nice spirited discussion. But I maintain that if the White Sox player development system is good, then some of these guys are going to be in the rotation over the next 2 years. And if that doesn't happen, I think that's a pretty serious indictment of Chris Getz and his player development operation. So again, we're going to see pretty soon because he's unlike past years. There's a lot there that he can work with.
Yeah, so that was the next couple of things on the agenda here is that is the developmental system working, and are you confident in the system churning out enough pitching to fill the major league roster, or are they going to have to? Are you fairly confident that they're going to have to go out and make a couple of moves here?
Well, certainly they're going to have to go out and make moves for 2024. Um, what does it take these days? 8 or 9 starters to get through a season,
I
and
think the
they've got
average is
two.
11.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they've got two, assuming Kopech can come back into form, and three when Nastrini is ready to go up. So yeah, there's a lot that he's going to have to sort of patch together in 2024. But beyond that, the system has never been deeper in pitching. And I will commend whoever made those trades at the deadline. And I think from what we read, it was both Rick Hahn and Williams, but Jake Eater, Kai Bush, Nastrini, they were all great additions. Corella,
Yeah.
yeah, he has been lights out.
Yeah.
Batista, who they picked up for international money at the deadline, the system. And then you add on top of that all of the draft picks who are coming through the system and have come up in the last 2 years. And I've seen most of them in Kannapolis and Winston-Salem. And it's really deep and very exciting. And I just hope they can develop them.
Yeah. I mean, just the trades alone, and the thing is that it seems like all of those deals that were made at the trade deadline, it seems like from what I've seen so far, it seems like every single one of those guys is talented. It's not like they picked up just some guys who are org guys. These guys, for the most part, all of them look to have plus pitches at
Yeah.
least. And some of them have the ability to string it all together and do things. I mean, obviously, Eater, between TJ and the fractured foot and Kai Bush, coming back late because of the lateral oblique, whichever one it was, that sidelined him for a little while. There's been some hiccups there, but that Corella trade looks really good, especially for Keenan Middleton. Like, thanks for that one. And then Aldrin Batista, and we haven't seen Maximo Acosta from that trade yet. He's just down in the Ace, in Arizona doing his thing. But yeah, I'm interested in seeing what comes of that. I say Officer Doofy says, forget the rosters, put the people in place for development so these prospects can have a winning mentality, and in 5 years they're dominant. And that's one thing I did kind of want to bring up when talking about the shakeup in MILB. And I'm not necessarily saying that they start launching guys into the sun right off the bat. My thought was, and I've heard through a couple of different channels that with the previous GM and executive vice president, that there were some upgrades to developmental staff that were wanted to be put in place, and they were blocked for one reason or another, and it kind of stunted things a little bit, at least in the in the analytical biomechanical sphere. And that's stuff that I would like to see get a little bit more of a focus from the team.
Well, it's right. It's hard to quantify player development, right? I mean, even if you get the drafting and the trades right, how do you develop players? How do you use the analytics? What gets communicated from Chicago to Charlotte and Winston and Birmingham? How is that implemented? And there's potential for breakdown all along the way. I after Christian Mena's start last week when he just got honestly got hammered.
Yeah.
The next day, I went into the stands early, and I just went up to a scout and I introduced myself and said, "Were you here last night?" He said, "Yeah," and I was picking his brain as to what went wrong with Christian Mena, and we started talking about player development. He said, a lot of times it's not the people at the affiliates; it's the information coming out of, in this case, Chicago, where they may say, "I want you to do X, Y, Z with this player." Um, and the folks at the affiliate might think, well, that's not what we would agree with. So there, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of components that go into player development, and we have no idea, if there are breakdowns in this process and where they are, or you just have to wait and see if they can, at the end of the day, turn these guys into major leaguers.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like a lot of the time people ask me, oh, what did you think of so and so starting? And like you kind of almost have to throw the caveat in there for, especially for the starting pitchers, is that you don't know what they've been instructed specifically to work on. I mean, obviously, speaking of the Christian Mena start, it wasn't his goal to go out there and work on everything getting barreled up, and just getting hit hard, regardless of how far it went and whatever. But you know, like I don't know what pitches in particular that they want him to work on. If they're saying, hey, we want you to work on your changeup some more. Let's see you do that, and these guys pick up on it. Who knows? Like we just aren't privy to that kind of information, and it
Yep.
the results are then tainted. You know, so the results that you think that you're seeing aren't necessarily the results that you're seeing.
I agree completely. You never know what they're working on, if they're working on something mechanically, if they're working on a new pitch. That's going on all the time. Um, yeah, no way to know. And the other thing is, quite frankly, what I wrestle with is here in Charlotte, every pitcher gets lit up. I mean, everybody gets
Yeah.
hammered. And so for me, it's really hard to know who's pitching well. Um, but the White Sox do because they bring guys up and they often succeed in Chicago, some of the relievers. Um, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's I mean that right there is proof that if we're watching them in Charlotte and for whatever reason they're just getting beat all around the place and then they get brought up to Chicago and they put up respectable numbers. So
Right.
clearly that says that either A, they're working on something. Obviously, the park factor in Charlotte's something to be credited for some of that stuff as well. But yeah. So speaking of Charlotte, that's where you spent the most of your time. So I figured that's where we would start, and we just kind of work our way down to the lower levels as we go through here, and we're just going to hit it all because why not? I know that
Absolutely.
I'd like to hear what you have to say, and I know the listeners will as well. So the big question for me, and we've sort of touched on this already, the possible promotions to fill rotation spots for next year, because we know that obviously, yes, if Kopech even comes back as a starter, that there's going to be him and Cease because Clevenger's no doubt going to opt out. I mean, who knows? They might sign him back or whatever. But Schultens and Toussaint both signed 1-year deals this year, so they may or may not be back. So we don't know. So we have to figure out who the guys are that are going to come in and fill some of this time in the rotation. Um, so we've touched on Nastrini, we've touched on Mena. One guy that we have not touched on yet, who is on his way back from TJ and has been doing rehab starts, is Johan Dominguez.
Right.
And I like his stuff. What have you seen from Johan?
I'm a big fan as well. I remember at the start of last season, he made 2 or 3 starts, and I remember talking to some guys in the press box. I said, "Who is this guy? This
Yeah,
guy is great."
yeah,
And then he went down with TJ, and so he's been working his way back. And right now, I think All I care about is that he's getting innings under his belt and building up arm strength and he'll work in the off season and then let's see what we have next spring. But I think the potential's there, and the biggest thing holding him back is going to be the innings limit as he comes back from TJ. But otherwise, I think he can definitely help the White Sox at a certain point next season.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought, and I was actually, I follow him on Instagram, and I happened to catch him in, I think that was like March or April, where he was throwing off the mound, and I was pretty shocked the other day in his start. He threw something like 88 pitches, and I couldn't believe it. I was pretty
Yeah.
shocked about that.
And I was talking to, I don't pretend to be this great pitching and hitting analyst. I talk to scouts. I talk to people who know a lot more than I do. I've got a buddy of mine who works in the press box, and I talked to him about pitching. I said, "What did you think about Dominguez?" And he said, "Got a killer changeup, and he'll throw it at any point in any count. He's not afraid." And that's that's impressive.
Yeah, I think that's probably his most improved pitch actually, because I've been watching him since he was in Birmingham, and I think even when he was on the dash. And his curveball and his fastball were always really good, and his changeup was a nice compliment. But the other night, the
Yeah.
ones that you were seeing, where it's just fading away and outside to left-handed hitters, and we had talked about this on Twitter, that it's just like pretty much like the perfect kind of complement to that curveball that's really hard, goes down and away from right-handed hitters. Now he's got something for the left-handed hitters as well with that changeup, and it's a nice pitch, and the movement's really nice. So we'll see where that how that develops.
I agree. He's not as much of a household name as some of these other guys that we're going to talk about, but I think guys like he and Corella and a couple other guys out there that could really surprise on the upside.
Um, so speaking of the earlier, you mentioned Burke and Davis Martin. Um, so both of
Yeah,
those guys.
and
I mean, obviously Davis Martin, TJ. Sean Burke, he's just kind of disappeared. Nobody really knows what's going on with him. Is it that what was it, an oblique that was bothering him earlier in the year,
it was I think it was the oblique that bothered him in spring training.
and then it went to his shoulder? Does that sound right?
Could be, yeah, yeah. Um, that's a shame. But his injury and the Davis Martin injury, those were devastating injuries for the White Sox as well as those guys personally. I mean, Davis was the start before Davis got hurt. I remember it so clearly. He went 6 innings, shutout, 10 strikeouts. In the sixth inning, he hit 97 on his fastball. I mean, it was just all coming together for him, and he was gonna. I mean, he would have been in Chicago and would have worked his way up in that rotation. Maybe
Yeah,
and Burke, same thing. I mean, Chris Getz said it. We're probably going to use Chris Burke in 2023 in Chicago. Um, I feel sorry for those guys, and it really hurt the organization as well.
yeah, for sure. um, so the guys, I sent you the sheet earlier today, and it said the young
Mm-hmm.
guys in MLB, and the three guys that are listed are Lenine, Corey Lee, and Oscar Colas. Oscar
Right.
Colas is on his way back to you, but Lenine and Corey Lee spent some time there. How much of Corey Lee did you see? Because I know that was in kind of in your little window there where you were kind of checked out from Charlotte. So how much of that did you see?
Hi, Mom.
I did go to batting practice and had a chance to meet him, talk to him. Interesting guy. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I guess he's a defense first catcher. Not a bad thing. Could certainly capable of being a backup catcher next year. Um, and then I think you mentioned Lenine. I like Lenine. I think the White Sox have seen him enough to know whether or not they think there's a role for him. I'll be curious to see what that is.
Yeah,
And I think we were all surprised that they sent Oscar back. I mean, you just how that's so rare that you bring a guy up, you stick him out there, and you said, all right, we're going to see what he can do for the rest of the season. And then you say, all right, we're going to send him back for the last 2 weeks of the minor league season.
that was the thing that baffled me. Like the first time that they sent him back, I got it.
Right?
And I understood why they did it, and they said why they did it. This time they're sending him back with 2 weeks left in the season, so I'm kind of I don't like the only thing that I can see is that this is the front office sending this guy a message.
Yeah.
That you need to, we've told you what you need to do, and you are not, you know, f- listening to what we're saying. So clearly, we need to do something here to jog that noggin loose. So you do what we're asking you to. Thank you for the follow there, Dual Heel. Appreciate that. Um, yeah, like as far as Lenine goes, you've seen it, and I know I've certainly seen it. A bunch of other people have seen it. That it generally takes Lenine. When he gets to a level, it takes him a while to get comfortable, and
Yeah.
I mean the batting average hasn't necessarily been there yet, but you know when he came to Charlotte, he didn't hit there either. When he came to Birmingham, didn't hit there either. And every single time he gets to one of these spots, once he gets comfortable, then he starts hitting the heck out of the ball, and he's consistently, 300 and above and hitting for power. So I'm hoping that they allow him the headspace to get comfortable and work his way into things. But again, we'll see. Speaking of guys that do that kind of thing, another guy who just got bumped up to Charlotte, Jose Rodriguez. He's one of those guys who's known to also have that slight delay for 20 games or so, and then after that, then he starts hitting. So, are you of the mind you think he's going to spend a lot of time in Charlotte next year, or are you expecting him to move on quickly?
My guess is, well, I would think it would make sense for him to spend a lot of time in Charlotte, but for the most part, except for Colas and Sosa, prospects rarely do seem to spend a lot of time in Charlotte. Right? A lot of the can't miss guys. Like I'm not anticipating seeing Colson Montgomery more than a month or two when they decide to move him up.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't know what their plan is for him. And he's there's a real difference of opinion as to what his future is. So, yeah, I would think we'd see, but my guess is I would think we'd see him for much of the season next year here in Charlotte.
Yeah, that's I was kind of thinking that we unless that major shakeup that we're talking about, where Yoan's gone and Tim Anderson's gone. I kind of think that
Yeah.
maybe Popeye's going to end up sticking there for a while. So other guys that are kind of on the verge of making their way up, Jordan Leisure just acquired with Nick Nastrini. Have you
Mhm.
seen him throw at all?
Several times. I've watched him pitch several times, and I've talked to him. Um, you know, by my count, we've got four for sure former Dodgers. I'm curious if there are others, but and I've talked to I think three of them now, and I always ask them about the Dodger mystique in terms of developing pitchers, and they all said it's true. They know what they're doing developing pitchers. Jordan Leisure said, I wouldn't be here in AAA if it wasn't for the Dodgers. He said, I had about a mid 90s fastball, and they worked with me and helped me get it up into the upper 90s. and it's a big fastball. And I think he's got a really great slider from what the few 3 or 4 times I've seen him in Charlotte. And he said that they're teaching him a curveball since he got to Charlotte. And I talked to Donnie Veal, the pitching coach in Charlotte last week, and he said, "Yeah, it's coming along fine. He got a strikeout in a game recently using his curveball." So,
Did see that, yeah.
yeah, I think I could easily see him making Chicago out of spring training next year.
Yeah, I would. I'm.
I'd kind of be shocked if he didn't.
Yeah, I kind of would be as well. Actually kind of surprised that that he hasn't gotten brought up yet, just simply because of what we've seen from the pitching staff. But then again, with the way that whole clubhouse and everything's just been this year, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to try and keep some people away from that toxicity up there. Um,
That's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're probably right.
I mean, it's been kind of ugly,
That's
and
a,
I don't know. It's
a
not.
shame that is.
Yeah. Oh, it's awful. I mean, it's just awful to watch. Um, so Carlos Perez, he's also there. Actually, just got brought back up.
Yes.
So, which makes me happy. The only thing that I'm kind of upset about is that Yasmani Grandal's still there, and you know, I supported him for a really long time. But like this year, it's fairly evident that he's just either hurt or just not performing, one or the other. And either way, with his contract being up, like we know that that the team's in terrible standing. So I don't understand why he's still here and eating up, at bats that Carlos Perez and Corey Lee could be getting all of those at bats. Like my personal opinion, we should have moved on and just had those two guys just take all those at bats. But your thoughts on Carlos Perez?
I personally like Carlos. I thought that his 2022 season was phenomenal. He, I think, I don't know how he ended the season, but for most of the season, for about 80-90% of the season, he was the toughest guy to strike out in the International League. Great bat to ball skills. Um, and, the White Sox kept saying his defensive skills were improving.
Mm.
Um, this year, my guess is after he didn't sniff the major leagues after having such a great season last year, that this year had to be really tough to come back to Charlotte and start all over again. And he had an okay season. I'm curious what the White Sox think about him, and if I would like to think that he and Corey Lee will both be in spring training. I'm guessing they'll bring in a veteran catcher, a Yan Gomes kind of guy, Sandy Leon, somebody on
Yeah.
a 1 year deal just to have a veteran catcher, and then let Carlos or Corey Lee be the backup. Or perhaps they get bold and say, let's go with both of them.
Yeah. I mean, personally, that's what I'd prefer because at this point, I don't think there's really, I know that Rick Hahn, before he stepped out the door, he had mentioned trying to compete in 2024, and everybody pretty much saw right through that. So, and Chris Getz has apparently stopped mentioning it so much in his interviews and whatever, because I think he knows what's on the horizon here. So I'm hoping that they just kind of say, let's let these guys play. Let's see what we have. And I agree. And I was going to ask you about that. What role the situation of Carlos Perez, he hit the crap out of the ball last year, and then this year he's stuck in AAA again, and you know, you know, God bless Sebi, but Carlos Perez, much better bat. I don't feel that his defense was, Sebi had, was good defensively, but I mean, at some point when you're hitting, 170, I don't, I don't care anymore that your defense is good. And then when the guy who's in front of him is hitting 223, like let's just move along here, especially as we're out of the race in May. So,
Right. Right.
Um, Adam Hackenberg.
Yep, yep,
I got a list of guys here. So Adam Hackenberg, Xavier Fernandez, Yolbert Sanchez, and I mean there are a list of others that I will go here that are Rule 5 eligible, but Xavier Fernandez and Yolbert are both Rule 5 eligible this year. Um,
right.
do you see any? I mean, personally, I doubt that any of them get protected. Um, but do you see any of those guys having a role? Maybe Xavier Fernandez as a DH type player.
Well, except for the fact that he's a Rule 5 eligible guy, um, he really has had a under the radar really nice season, and he's actually been the hottest Knights hitter in the last month.
Mm.
Um, but being Rule 5 eligible, it's hard to see how that makes any sense. I think Yolbert was an interesting guy, but they'll have to cut bait with him. Um, Laz Rivera, he had an interesting game this week. I don't know if you saw.
Yeah.
He they ran out of pitchers, so he pitched the last inning, had a shutout inning, and then he knocked in the winning run in the bottom half of the inning. So, it's been a tough year for Laz just getting on the field. He gets uh, parked on the development list a lot, and other guys play ahead of him. Um, so, yeah, he'll be gone. I wish him well. Nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, like the thing is that yeah, he's Rule 5 eligible, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these guys come back. But I mean, like the thing, I always liked Laz Rivera, from when he was with the Intimidators up until he was with the Knights. He was never really a flashy guy, but you could put him in a bunch of different positions, and he would go out there and perform pretty well. And I mean, his bat's never really been huge, but he can hit, at least somewhat satisfactorily. So
I'll tell you about Laz is this guy is an all-star in batting practice. I
mm,
mean, I can't tell you how many times I hear this loud pop, and I look over there, and it's Laz in the batting cage. I mean, he makes really hard, solid contact, but clearly hasn't gotten on the field. That's too bad. Hey, gonna ask him, what do you think is the future, if any, for Zach Remillard with the team?
and that's actually funny you mentioned that because like I kind of pair him and Laz Rivera kind of in the same. Kind of almost in the same mold. Is that they're guys that you can put in, like they're like the great utility guys. Like you can put them in positions, and they're going to do what you ask them to do, to their ability. I mean, you're not going to get
Mm-hmm.
like a Nolan Arenado at third base, but they can play there. And
Yep.
they can play decent ball there, and they can go out and hit. I was really happy for Zach when he got brought up, and the fact that he got sent down, I was pretty bummed for him because with the White Sox, he did everything that they asked him to do, and he did a pretty acceptable job in my opinion, doing everything that he was asked to do. I mean, maybe bunted a little bit much, I can say that, but you know, as far as a utility guy goes, like I don't think there's not many. The White Sox have been good at a couple of things, relievers and utility guys. You got Danny Mendick, Zach Remillard, Laz Rivera's
Yeah.
a good one. I mean, they've had a bunch of good utility guys, and he can be useful to somebody. I mean, it might not be the White Sox, but he could definitely go somewhere and play a valuable role for another team. I'm 100% certain of that. So,
One of the things I like about there's a lot I like about Zach. I mean, that's an amazing story. His first year he didn't hit 200 in Charlotte,
yeah.
and the next year he's up in the 280s, 290s. So it's an amazing story. Um, One of the things I like about him is that he is one of the highest baseball IQ guys I've ever known, and It seems to me, I'm curious what you think. The White Sox don't play like a fundamentally sound, high baseball IQ brand of baseball.
I agree.
The base running errors, they don't move runners. Just and Zach, you can count on him for that. He
100%.
might not get it done, but he knows what he should be doing.
Yep, that's exactly the thing, is that, he's not necessarily going to be able to, be perfect all the time, but what his focus is will always be team based, and it will be always to do the right fundamental baseball thing in order to achieve whatever result it is that that the team is trying to move towards, and this has been one thing, on our stream that we've talked about a lot, is that recently, with the picking up of these guys from Ole Miss and guys like Zach Remillard, is that these guys are used to winning, and they're
Yeah.
used to doing valued team practice, where they hit the opposite way, where they move runners over, where they know what it takes to win a baseball game. And that's something that seriously seems to be lacking with the White Sox major league club, is that there's a lot of stat guys, that are trying to pad their stats, or worried about hitting home runs, or what they're going to do, instead of doing the simple things, just trying to go opposite way and get a single to move everybody around, So,
And I'm sure you agree with me. That's a key component of player development, right? That needs to be emphasized in the minor leagues. You need. I think these teams need to play to win and teach their players how to do the little things to win. And for my last game in Winston-Salem, maybe 2 weeks ago, I was just shooting the breeze off the record with Guillermo Quiros, the manager there, and I said, I love how your team does the little things right, and you've got a high IQ team. And I said, and it's the same way in Kannapolis. And he said, it's no accident. He said that in spring training, they put he and Pat Leland together to work with the same group of minor league players.
mm,
And he and Pat talked about, we need to teach these guys, need to play to win and teach them how to do the little things that win ball games. And I think that's great.
yeah, I'm on board with that 100%. So the just to drop these names in there, Rule 5 guys. We talked about Xavier Fernandez and Yolbert Sanchez, but Lazarus Vera, Chase Selesky, Garrett Davila, Caleb Freeman, Andrew Perez, Alex Mateo, and JB Olson. JB Olson's been kind of MIA for most of the year with an injury, but yeah, those are your Rule 5 guys. So we'll spend some time in Birmingham here, just because there's so many interesting stinking names in Birmingham. You don't go there, I don't go there, but we watch a lot of it, and everybody knows the names. So can't talk about Birmingham, can't talk about prospects without talking about the White Sox number one prospect, Colson Montgomery. Um, Injury, lost a bunch of the year. Started out in Winston-Salem, hit something like 600,
Yes.
and then got bumped up to Birmingham, and the batting average hasn't gone as hoped, but the on base percentage is 400, roughly right around 400. Um, Anything that
Oh,
you've
well.
seen, you like him?
Oh, yeah. Um, I will say this: if people want to know more about the Birmingham team, one of my FutureSox colleagues, Elijah Evans, just spent a week down there. He interviewed all these guys. He's on top of it. If you want to follow Birmingham, check out his work. But I will say, yeah, Colson seems like a beautiful swing. He's got the intangibles. I remember meeting him before his first game in Kannapolis. I met he and Wes Cath, and I thought, well, they're both really nice guys. Wes Cath reminds me of a guy just out of high school. There was a certain confidence and swagger with Colson. I thought, man, this guy knows he's a major league player in waiting, and yeah. and he's done nothing to dissuade anybody from it.
Yeah, agreed. I was also at that game actually. At the home opener last what was that, two last year? It was last year. Last year?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we were both there. And I think
Okay.
we got treated to just a Colson Montgomery walk, and that was it out of the both of them. But yeah, Edgar Caro, the number 3 prospect for the White Sox, who was acquired with Kai Bush for Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez. Uh, Fatigued. He's caught more games than he's ever caught in his entire life this season, so um, they've got him taking some time off. And unfortunately, like Ivan Gonzalez and Sebastian Rivero have been catching a lot in Birmingham, so we haven't seen him catch a whole lot. But you see you see any of the stuff that he was doing when he was out there? I mean, he hasn't been in North Carolina yet for anything, but did you see any of the stuff that was going on there?
I don't have any great insights on him, but he seems to be doing just great in Birmingham at the plate. And I remember when we first acquired him, I talked to a buddy of mine who's a big prospect guy, and he said, "Yeah, I think I'm a little more down on him than a lot of people." And so I thought, well, let's see exactly what he does. But he's been great. He's done nothing to make me think that he isn't the number one catcher in 2025.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Kind of think that that's probably going to be the way things go. Is that assuming that he continues to develop and everything, that's where he's going to end up. Um,
What a heck of a trade!
oh, as soon as that trade was made, I immediately tweeted out, "This is a massive overpay and is a terrible trade by the Angels." I was like, "This is super dumb," and y- I knew that they weren't going to make a run in the West. I just knew. And sure enough, then they go on this losing streak, and Giolito goes out and throws a couple of stinkers, and then they're 10 games out, and then they put them on waivers, and now both guys are in Cleveland. So they literally got nothing out of it whatsoever, except for they dealt their two of their top prospects. I was just
Yeah, yeah.
ridiculous. Um, moving along, uh, Wilfred Veras. Have you seen him live at all? Because he was in.
Never.
You have not.
Uh,
Large man with ridiculous amounts of torque and power in his swing, and led. I believe he was leading the Southern Atlantic League in doubles when he left. And I think that I looked earlier today. I think he's still like eighth in hits in the Southern Atlantic League, and he's been gone for a month.
it's funny how these guys leave these other leagues and like Tim Elko and still lead them in certain categories.
Yep.
Yeah.
The thing about Wilfred Veras, that the only thing that concerns me about him is the bat's going to play, and it looks like it's going to play no matter where no matter where he ends up. The bat is going to play. I think it's just going to be a question of where the glove fits. As far
Where
as
do you see him
position
ending
goes.
up?
I mean, they're playing him in the outfield now, and his arm is underrated. He does have a nice arm, and he had quite a few assists in Winston Salem. Um, the only thing is, I just don't know how willing the White Sox are going to be to have another. Not that I'm not going to go that low and say that another Eloy in the outfield, but I'll say that just for a small comparison. There is that I don't know if they're going to want a guy that isn't a fluent as an outfielder, if you will. So that's my only
Think
question.
he's? Do you think he's like a league average defender or not even that?
I think that he needs. See, the thing was, is he started off as like a third baseman, so
Right.
he's not really an outfielder. So the thing is that he's going to be one of those works in progress that he's going to have to learn how to play the outfield and well enough to for his routes to be acceptable as a league average, major league outfielder. And I mean, maybe you're looking at a, I don't know, Jordan Alvarez type thing, where it's you don't really expect a whole lot out of it, but he'll go out and hit you 35, 40 home runs possibly, or I mean, his profile so far has been more along the lines of he'll hit you 50 doubles and 20 home runs to this point, but he's really
Could you
young.
see could you see Varys being the reason that they move Eloy?
I mean, I could see it being the reason, but the thing is, I don't know if he's. I
So it's
mean,
not like Eloy had the best year.
no, he did not, and he's always hurt. I mean, that's been the bag on him
And
for
where are
years.
you going to play him? And he's a DH.
Yeah, and instead of paying somebody $17 million to be a DH, you could pay somebody 750,000 to be a DH, and I mean, the bat's not as polished as Eloy's, but then again, his results haven't really been all that great this year either. So
Right, right.
and also obviously the bloodlines for Wilfred Varys, it got some pretty decent bloodlines with Tatis being in the family genes. So I mean it's entirely possible that he might have a really nice career. It's just I don't know where defensively he's going to end up. I mean, it's entirely possible that he could end up as a first baseman. It's entirely possible he could be a left fielder, but or just a DH. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Um,
Right.
Speaking of first baseman slash DH, Tim Elko, who we just speaking of, who the Carolina League just ended yesterday, and he was tied for first in home runs. I think somebody tied him on the last day of the season
And
for
he hasn't
first.
been there in at least what 2 months.
Hasn't been there since June 25th. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, when I watched him in Kannapolis, I mean, it was clearly man among boys. It's like, oh, come on, let's move him already. This is nuts. So he goes to Winston and he hits great there, a lot of power. So now he's in Birmingham and doing well. This is a guy that you keep waiting for him to move up to a level where he start. Some of the shine comes off, but
yeah.
not yet.
Well, I think
Not
that
yet.
in Double A, and this is another thing, and I don't know as it's necessarily him being at Birmingham that is the reason because he's been having a tough. Well, at least last week was tough for him. I think actually the last 2 weeks 'cause we played the maybe it was last week. Yeah, I think it's been 2 weeks. He's been having like the numbers haven't been as crazy as they had been because he was hitting 330 and had like a OPS above 1,000 for a while in Double A. So I don't think it's that he can't hit. He has been chasing. It does look like he's been pushing, but I kind of personally when I watch his at bats, I kind of look at him and I go, this guy looks like he's gassed. Because of the long
Interesting.
year. And that's just what it looks
Yeah.
like to me. And he might hop in the chat and say that's not at all what's going on. But that's what it looks like to me. And I don't necessarily think that it's that he can't handle the Double A pitching. I don't think that it's he ran into that slump in Kannapolis as well when everybody was complaining that he was still in Kannapolis. He went on he hit like one home run over in May. So he slowed down, and then once June kicked over, then he started hitting again, and then he got promoted.
Right.
It's like they let him work through his stuff, and then promoted him. And when he went to Winston Salem, hitting the ball all over the place. So we'll see what happens there.
Can you see him in Chicago?
I can. Um, like we were talking about that winning thing. I don't know if you saw there was an at bat that he had last week, I believe, earlier in the week, and he hit a ball into the right center gap, and it realistically for him it should have probably been a single, but he hustled and dove into second base and turned it into a double, and it ended up igniting a rally. and he does things like that. He's a team guy, and
Hmm.
he's not one of these guys that's just going to go out there and try and hit home runs. This guy drives in runs. He hustles. He plays a decent first base. I could absolutely see him in Chicago.
And again, it's just back to the problem is where are you going to play him? Where are you going to play Varys? I mean, it's like moved Berger, and maybe they'll move Sheets or Eloy and alleviate this log jam, and then they've got another one right behind them
Yeah, well, I mean,
potentially.
you got Vaughn, you know.
Yeah.
So the thing that's going to be here is that you've got Vaughn, you got Sheets. I think Sheets' time is just about I think the clock's about punched on that one that he's gonna make his way elsewhere. I don't really it's between him and is it Colas, like their two bats are hitting like 150 over the last like 2 weeks or something like that. It's just brutal, and he hasn't. The thing that was talked about, there was Rick Hahn said, "Well, we're bullish about Sheets and Vaughn," and thing is that Sheets just hasn't. The production just hasn't been there. He put up some decent numbers, but just hasn't been working out, and I don't see any reason to keep another first baseman around when you've got several on their way that are certainly capable of doing that. So,
Right.
um, recent development of Mason Adams getting sent to Birmingham. What do you got on Mason Adams?
That's a great story. Talk about a guy under the radar. He's just had a phenomenal season. I mean, I just think it's amazing. I guess you talk about he and Jonathan Cannon at the same time because they both started in Kannapolis. Both did great. I tell you, it's funny with Mason Adams is he was for most of the season piggybacking behind Noah Schultz, and Schultz, was going 25 pitches, 30 pitches, 35 pitches, and then Mason would come in and pitch like 6 innings and just so impressive. Continued in Winston Salem, and now both he and Cannon have progressed up to their third level of the year in Birmingham. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The piggyback situation. It's like you have to go out there and you have to see no Schultz,
Yeah.
and then once he gets taken out of the game, you're like, okay, cool, he's gone. We can relax. And then Mason Adams just comes out and peppering the strike zone and just relentless, throwing strikes and striking guys out and just, not allowing these guys to get a hold in the box. And he's just had such a great year and he's been a lot of fun. Um, yeah, personal favorite of mine. I've been tweeting out his highlights all year and just what a great year he's had, and especially like at Jacksonville State, and it's like just out of nowhere. So
Kind of like the Davis Martin, not a high draft pick and just explodes. And you got to have a couple of those guys who come out of nowhere and have breakout seasons who aren't high draft picks to really boost your franchise.
yeah, that was like the as far as Davis Martin goes. Like I've been watching him since he was with at least since he's with the Dash, and like I could see that the potential was there for what eventually did come. Um, Strike thrower, uh, really nasty curveball, and a nice changeup. And like the thing that finally put him over the top was 2022. He got an extra couple of ticks on the fastball. As soon as
Right?
that happened, it was over. So all right. So who do you think that Matt Thompson, who's I believe he's Rule 5 eligible? Is he Rule 5 eligible this year? I could have swore that Matt Thompson is Rule 5.
So, was he drafted in the same class as Kelly and
No, he was with Dahlquist, and
Alquist?
Dahlquist isn't Rule 5. But I could have sworn,
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
not. But do you think,
No, they would protect him because he's another one on the cusp for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, I think so
Had a
too.
and had a really nice year, Double A.
Yeah, I think that
I
like
could
the
see him being the next guy up after Nostrini.
Yeah, that would track. He's a little bit older than Mena. The only thing that I've noticed with Thompson is that the consistency in between innings in a single outing sometimes kind of eludes him a little bit, and that's kind of been his main hangup because the guy's stuff is really nasty. I saw this. I went and saw him in Winston Salem, and he threw a curveball. It bounced up, hit the catcher, bounced straight up in the air, and there was a guy on third base who was trying to score. Matthew Thompson came, caught the ball at home plate, and tagged the guy out. Amazing. Um, yeah,
Heads up, gotta love it.
yeah, very athletic and nasty stuff. Brian Ramos, what do you think? Do you think that he probably starts next year at Charlotte, or do you think he starts in Birmingham to get some innings in? What do you think?
Well, again, I'm not as well versed, albeit honest, as on Birmingham as I am on Winston and Kannapolis and Charlotte. But highly regarded, had a big season. Um, but again, I don't know if you fast track him if Yoan Moncada's not going anywhere.
Yeah,
So if you've got one more year, I don't, do you want him to spend a full year in Charlotte or do you want him to have a little more time in Birmingham?
yeah, that's I'm kind of torn there. Is that the major problem and the reason why he's only the seventh ranked prospect is because he started off the season injured. You know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um,
I just don't know how much the White Sox want their top prospects to spend in Charlotte.
I've had this debate actually a couple of times. How much time do the White Sox want to? I mean, especially pitching prospects, but
Oh
even the
yeah.
even the hitters, their stats in Charlotte. I mean, it's like hitting on the moon. They
Yep.
just kind of hit a pop up
That's
and
exactly right. Yeah. I mean, Gavin Sheets is a great example. What he hit 18 home runs in Birmingham and had a good year, but then he comes to Charlotte and has that by the All Star break.
yeah. And like that's a thing, I've talked about this numerous times. Is that Gavin Sheets, if you look at his game from Wake Forest, in Kannapolis, and in Winston Salem, his calling card was always bat to ball.
Yep.
And it just kind of became the narrative that if he's going to be the first baseman in the major leagues, that he's got to hit for power. So everybody started talking about his power this, power that, because he's hitting 300 every year, in every level that he goes. And then all of a sudden, everybody kind of focuses on his lack of power. And then 2020 hits, and he's not invited. Goes and works on being an outfielder with Larry, and all of a sudden, he comes in, he hits a little bit, he gets a little power bump here, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you add the power, usually you lose the bat to ball skills.
Yeah, and that seems to be the thing, because that was the thing that always impressed me about Gavin Sheets was that he generally hardly ever got outclassed by a pitcher. You know,
Right.
as far as bat to ball goes. Now he wouldn't hit it necessarily to the moon, but he'd hit a single the opposite way and everything was fine.
You could hit a line drive, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Um. So guys that I've got slotted off as like longer shot guys, and let me know which obviously these guys we've talked about quite a few of these guys already, but Jonathan Cannon, Jake Eater, Kai Bush, um, those guys I kind of figure that even if they do start in Birmingham, you know, think they'll probably spend more time in Birmingham than they will in Charlotte, just because
Right.
I don't know if you want to necessarily leave them in Charlotte for too long so they get their brains beat in. Just like, I mean, I know that at some point you have to just go, this is not going to be a home run in Chicago. This is not going to be a home run in Yankee Stadium unless it's a, you know, the right field porch or whatever, in Yankee Stadium. But I mean, um, just that, there has to be that mental toughness there to say this is going to be fine. If I go elsewhere, just right here, that's what happens, So, but I would think that those guys probably end up doing that whole thing. I think that you're probably in Charlotte because I assume that next year you're probably going to start in Charlotte and not be running away from Charlotte super early. That you probably end up seeing Fraser Ellard, Gil Luna Jr., Addison Coffey, and Tristan Stivers. I'm assuming that those guys are going to probably move fairly quick. Bullpen arms and really nasty stuff. And Gil Luna's pickoff move is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I think he's got 12 pickoffs this year.
Wow. Wow.
And he,
That'll be fun.
yeah, and he was out for, I think, a month and a half this year. So he didn't pitch for a long stretch of time, and he's got 12 pickoffs. Guy's pickoff is ridiculous. So here's a question, and this relates to the White Sox, and I only put him in this in Birmingham just simply because that's where he is currently. What do the White Sox do with Garrett Crochet?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, the guy wants to start, and the team needs starters desperately, and he could do it next year. And they don't have that many candidates as starters next year. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're waiting for because it's not like they've still got him going and throwing in relief in
Right.
Birmingham. They did it in Charlotte.
Well, and so maybe this year they just want him to prove he's healthy. Get a few innings under his belt, and stretch him out in the spring.
I'm hoping because that's what he wants. And
Yeah.
if he feels like his personal development is being neglected, like you don't want to lose him mentally to the entire
Well, I think you give
organization.
him every opportunity to be a starter until he proves he can't. There's just no downside, is there?
I don't. I mean, I don't. I think that they should do it, but I guess we'll see like what side of the fence Chris Getz was on compared to the KW
Right.
Han situation. Ladder
Yeah.
Enjoyer asks, you think the shrinking MILB rosters will force more aggressive promotions, less room for org guys and roster fillers?
Well, it's been interesting to see the dramatic increase in promotions this year. If, and a lot of teams are very comfortable promoting from Double A to the major leagues, um, and so I think that's a trend that will certainly continue.
Well, I mean, you see it, especially. I mean, the Angels are insane. Bringing what is that? Noah Shanuel all the way from
Mm-hmm.
just got drafted. And he's already playing in the major leagues. Had like 20 games in Double A. He played against the Barons for a week, and he walked a bunch. He didn't really do a whole lot other than that, except for walk. And then all of a sudden, he's already playing for the Angels, and they skipped Edgar Caro, skipped high A, goes directly from A ball to Double A this year, and they're well known for doing that kind of thing. I don't know as if the White Sox will get that insane about it, but
Well, that we're talking about the Angels. Let's move on from the Angels and talk about the rest
fair
of the
enough.
major leagues and what they're doing.
Yeah,
But that being said, I mean, look at the Braves. They promote from Double A all the time, including a lot of pitchers. And they're not alone. A lot of teams are doing it, and a lot of teams are promoting guys. And with the spate of injuries in the major leagues, I mean, there's just more and more compelling reasons than ever to keep promoting guys quickly.
yeah. I mean, there was a point in time I feel like maybe 2 years ago where it seemed like you know before that it seemed like Double A was where all the prospects were, and then AAA was where all the journeymen lived. But then I felt
Hmm.
like that changed for like a period of like 2 or 3 years. But I feel like it's back to that again.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I think, and I think since COVID, teams just know that 26 players is not going to come close to getting through a 162 game season. And you look at what the White Sox did in Charlotte this year. I mean, there were veterans everywhere. There were no prospects in the out. Well, I guess Colas was in the outfield, but other than that, it was Veras and Marisnik and Billy Hamilton and Clint Frazier. I mean, all these former major leaguers, and every major league team was is doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stevens Piscotty. Um,
yeah.
and now Tyler
You go to
Nakin.
a Knights game, and it's like, oh, look at this, look this veteran on the other team. There's like, oh, I didn't know he was there, and they're on every team and every homestand. It's a new cast of veterans coming through town.
Yep. 100%. Gonna move this along here. Rule 5 guys in Birmingham. You got Ivan Gonzalez, catcher, who has been taking some of that stuff going, that Edgar Caro innings and at bats. Moises Castillo, who I do like, and he had a nice Arizona Fall League. He's put up a decent average. The glove is great. Um, that said, I don't think anybody's going to grab him if you didn't protect him.
Right.
Luis Mieses, who Andy Barquette calls the Dominican Daryl Strawberry, he is Rule 5 eligible, and I kind of think that they're going to throw him on the 40 man because they won't want to lose it. But he has
Yep.
had a fairly disappointing year this year as far as the bat goes, especially after last year's breakout year. But and then Jeremiah Burke, the other Rule 5 guy there.
Yep.
So we'll move to Winston Salem. He is back on the IL, and he's had a couple of trips to the IL this year. But DJ Gladney, he's sixth in home runs in the Southern Atlantic League. Had a pretty good year this year. Other than that, at least I feel like it was a good building year for him. I don't think necessarily that the numbers are going to be what you can expect. As far as like average and on base percentage, but I feel like he's made a little bit of progress. You see him a little bit?
Yeah, I did, and I spoke to him a little bit, and I think the great thing about his season this year, it was just a nice bounce back from a dreadful year last year. And he's back on a decent trajectory.
Yeah, that's kind of and the thing is like they've got him playing in the outfield now, and I've seen him make some really nice diving catches out in the outfield. So he's showing some acumen for being a baseball player, which is nice to see, because we've seen how the first base to outfield has gone in Chicago, and nobody wants to see that anymore. So that's been pleasant. Uh, Speaking of
Yeah,
amazing diving catches, Jacob Burke is in his
yeah.
second level at Winston-Salem. He's got a 771 OPS in Winston-Salem, but in Kannapolis he had a 928 OPS. The power has kind of disappeared a little bit in Winston-Salem, but what do you think of Jacob Burke?
Well, what a great story he was this year with a 52 game on base streak. That was fun to follow. I went to Winston to watch his record breaking game, and he got hit in his first at bat and set the record. And I talked to him, and I think he's tremendous. I really get a kick out of his game because he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He's not doesn't feel like, oh, I'm that highly thought of. I'm not that high. I wasn't that highly drafted, but I'm going to show them. I'm going to show these guys, and he plays with like that. And he's had a phenomenal year. I'm curious to see. It'll be a make or break season in Birmingham. I'm curious to see how he holds up there. But he's been a fun guy to watch, and so far so good.
Yeah, he definitely plays like his hair is on fire, but thank God his hair is not on fire because it is magical. Um,
Yeah, yeah. He's got that
so
look for sure.
he does. But now that Bryce Willis is there, they have dueling, flowing blonde manes, and they're both equally wondrous. So here's a guy that I have been on all year long and trying to get people to talk about. Michael Turner,
Yep.
unsung hero for the Dash. Very good defensively. Has a nice caught stealing percentage. Plays a nice catcher's brick wall back there. Not too much gets past him. Southern Atlantic League batting champion, OBP champion, sixth in walks, and third in doubles. Got anything to
Yeah.
say about him?
Yeah. Great season. I talked to his manager, Guillermo. He loves him, just sings his praises, says the defense is getting better, his footwork's getting better, he's got a nice arm, and tremendous at the plate. Yeah, all of a sudden we've gone from no catchers of note to all these people saying, well, Caro and Hackenberg and this guy and that guy are the catchers of the future. But man, you got to include Michael Turner in that conversation. He's been phenomenal this year.
That's been my thought all year, and I was expecting for him to end up in Double A, but then they traded Gio and Lopez to
Yeah.
Cal to the Angels, and Caro comes back, and I was like, well, that's inconvenient, and he just kept plugging along though, and still kept on doing what he's been doing, and just kept putting up numbers.
That's interesting. What do you think they do in the start of 2024 in terms of where they put Turner and where they put Caro, and they put Caro in Charlotte so that Turner can go to Birmingham?
I don't think so, actually. I
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
afraid
think
not.
that I kind of think that if they were going to move those guys, I would think that Turner would go to Charlotte and that Caro would stay put in Double A because of
Uh,
age. Number one, uh, and number two, I think that Caro has defensive work that he needs to do. He's pretty good, but if I was to put him and Turner next to each other, I would be more comfortable with Turner behind the plate defensively, and he's put up great numbers as well offensively. And I mean, let's be honest here. As far as like the initial investment goes, they have more invested into Caro that they should be worried more about his development as opposed to when you see Turner and he's more of a polished player. Like the thing that that lacks in Turner's game, I think, is the home run power, which Caro has a little bit more of. Now I don't see Caro being like a 30 home run guy, probably. More along the lines of like 15 to 20 is my guess. Um, but I would not be surprised to see Turner get bumped to AAA just so he continues to get plate appearances. And then,
mhm.
you know, I don't know. See, here's the thing: is that you're gonna have to figure out like what your thinking is with Hackenberg.
And Calvin Harris. I mean, you got another guy coming up right behind these guys.
Yeah, see, I think Calvin Harris goes to Advanced A.
Yeah, I think he's the catcher in Winston next year,
Yeah, that would
which
be
is
my
exciting.
guess. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, I like him as well, and he's the bat's good as well for him as well. It's a, I'd say like feel like Turner's defense is a little bit the arm's a little bit better than Harris, but that's not a knock on Harris. It's just that Turner's arm is really good, and his defense has been pretty stinking spectacular all year long, and he's handled that pitching staff in Winston, and there's been pretty good results in Winston Salem from the pitching. You know, um, Let's
And by the way, Harris is yet another one of those guys from a winning program, right?
yep,
Yeah.
yeah. Get that get your Elko, your Jacob Gonzalez, your Calvin Harris.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, thanks for the follow there, adorable Disrupo or whatever. Uh, Lloydell Chappelle, um, for his
Yep.
first year stateside, I want to say that he's like 12th or 13th or something like that in hits in the Southern Atlantic League. And I've had some people say, oh, well, he's a disappointment. And my thinking on this is that this is his first year stateside. He's
He skipped
transitioning.
Kannapolis.
Yeah, he skipped Kannapolis, and he's transitioning
Right.
from from the outfield to second base. And you're still
Yeah.
getting pretty good production. And I've seen him at second base. He's made some great plays at second base.
And he's really finishing the season strong. He kind of struggled there in the middle as he got adjusted to IA, but finishing strong and he looks deserving of an aggressive assignment.
Yeah, I think that
I remember I talked to Andy Barquette, who's the White Sox hitting coordinator, when when Chappelle and Ryan Burroughs and all these guys were still in the Dominican, and he said this is the best class of players he's ever seen come, as a class, um, come up. He's just really high on all these guys.
yeah, I'm still. I mean,
Hernandez,
you're still waiting on Burrows. He's on the dev
yeah.
list in Kannapolis with Ronnie Hernandez and George Wolkow. So you're still waiting to see them. And I know that there's Carlos Jimenez, left-handed first baseman, who's got
Mm-hmm.
a really nice swing as well. Who I want to get eyes on at some point, but that didn't happen this year. But probably next year. Um, Connor McCullough, another one of these guys that started in Kannapolis and threw a no hitter in Kannapolis. Granted, 7 innings, but still a no
We'll
hitter.
take it.
Yeah,
We'll take it.
and he goes to Winston Salem, and he's pitching well there as well. Is he another one of these these guys that people weren't expecting to do things and moving up? I mean, kind of looks that way.
Kind of like another Mason Adams, coming out of nowhere and really looking deserving of staying in the rotation and moving up the chain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. I mean, and the thing is, we'll talk about him when we get to Kannapolis here in a minute. But there's still a couple of guys that
Oh my gosh.
also have that same distinction as being guys that you were expecting, like to be competent, and give you
Mhm.
some A ball numbers. But that staff in Kannapolis was nasty for the first half of the season. Um, so this year was supposed to be the coming out party for Norge Vera
Yeah. Hmm.
last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Got the prettiest mechanics of any White Sox minor league pitcher I've seen. It's beautiful, but can't stay healthy.
Yeah, and he made the last start for the Dash this year, and he went. I think he went a third of an inning and had 5 walks and 5 runs ish.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah, not so good.
Is that the game that Schweitzer came in and had like three nice innings behind him? And yeah, yeah,
Yep.
I remember that.
Yeah. So I mean, this year's just been. Uh, I don't. He's not. I don't. Is he even rated at this point? Is he in the top 30 anymore? I think he might have pitched himself out of that.
I can't imagine. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of those guys that everybody was so pumped on and thought was going to be one of those like franchise making international free agent signings, and it just has not formulated it to this point. So later promotion guys this year that played like roughly about a month or so in Winston Salem. Uh, Brooks Baldwin, Bryce Willits, and Mario Camilletti. Um,
Yeah.
Seen some really nice things. Camilletti, uh, OBP champion in the Carolina League. second in batting average, and like was it third in OPS or something like that. Also had a really nice year, just two walks shy of 100 for the year. Great year for Camilletti. Are you surprised that these guys got bumped and that they're doing as well as they're doing in Winston Salem?
I think it's exciting to see. It's great that they got rewarded for all having really solid years in low A. And my gosh, look what Baldwin has done in Winston. It's just red hot. Great way to finish up the season, and it'll be fun to watch them. I guess they'll all start in Winston next year, and we'll see what they can do. But all very deserving of their promotions. All had phenomenal years in Kannapolis, and
Yeah,
add a lot of depth to the White Sox on the non-pitching side.
yeah. Bryce Willits was the May Carolina Player of the Month. He was out of his mind in May when Elko was April, and then he went into a little, like a still kept the batting average up and whatever in May, but didn't hit as many home runs. But in May, Bryce Willits came to Kannapolis, and he went insane and hit all over the place. And I saw a funny tweet from Josh Norris talking about Brooks Baldwin getting promoted up to Winston Salem, and he said that he was a first baseman, utility guy that could maybe play a little bit of other stuff as well. And here's Brooks Baldwin starting shortstop for the Dash as the first baseman utility guy, and he's making great plays at shortstop, and he gets bumped into the White Sox MLB pipeline top 30 at number 30. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, great year. And he got better when he got bumped up, which is something that.
Camilletti, a solid second baseman.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
and crazy OBP. All of them did. All of them were doing. Again, we talk about the little things in Winston Salem. All three of them were the team guys. When you need something done, they went out and did the team thing, and beautiful to see. All right, so we'll move to the last one, Kannapolis. Obviously, what's left in Kannapolis is a shell of what was there when the season opened, and what is still the biggest remaining plus after all those promotions of the guys who have been there consistently is the pitching. And you spent quite a bit of time in Kannapolis. You got Noah Schultz, number 2. I know you at least went and saw him 2 or 3 of those starts. What did you see from Noah Schultz in person?
Wow, really impressive. Just a wipeout slider. I mean, from day one, it was a beautiful pitch and it was consistent. Uh, Big fastball, mid 90s. Um, he told me he had 4 pitches. He didn't really throw the changeup a lot, but and the first time he threw it, I knew he threw it because I saw the arm slot change, which is not a good thing.
That's not good, yeah.
Then when I saw a start a couple starts later, it was the same release point, so he really worked on it, and so yeah, coming along looks great. It's a little worrisome that he was on such a limited pitch count, and he got hardly any innings in this year, but um, hopefully that'll change next year in a big way.
Yeah, from what I understand, with the shoulder impingement, he took about a week off, and then he was back to throwing, but they didn't want to ramp him up again because the season was almost over. So he's been throwing, and it wasn't anything serious. It just he took a week off to get rid of that soreness, I guess, is
Right.
at least what I've heard. But yeah, so impressive. And, the numbers that he put up just working in that small window of his pitch counts.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about maximizing 35 pitches. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're going consistently going for 3+, you could go for 3+ innings on 35 pitches. Insane. So,
One bad start all year long. Otherwise, I would imagine just half dozen or less hits. I mean, it was that dominating of a performance.
yeah, and when you say bad, I mean comparatively to some of the other starts that we've seen, like not even close, not even
And not
close.
Charlotte Knight's bad. I'm just saying, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I wasn't going there,
Sorry,
but
sorry.
uh,
Rough year. I'm still getting
oh
over it.
man, yeah, that's I feel for you that you had to go there and watch that in the second half there. I haven't looked at the standings, but yeah, I think it was like last I looked, I think they had won like 6 or 7 games in the second half.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so also at Kannapolis, successful returns. Do you think that they were successful returns from TJ for Peyton Paulette and Tanner McDougal? Did you see enough?
Well, again, when guys are first back from TJ, you just want them to see you want to see them be healthy, get the velo back, and get the innings in. And I think they checked all those boxes. Um, you know, just a general comment about watching the Kannapolis pitching staff this year. It was a lot of fun. They didn't always dominate. They weren't leading in a lot of statistics, but they pounded the strike zone, and they were not, trying to, get by and walk and all these walks and ugly baseball. They pounded the strike zone, and I commend them for that. It was fun to watch and a lot of impressive results. Yeah, but to answer your question, yeah, I think Paulette and let's see, McDougal and yeah, or was it McDougal or
Yeah, yeah,
Murphy?
yeah.
Yeah,
McDougal and Peyton Paulette. Yep.
I think they had great years. I think it was definitely successful, and they got a lot of innings in. And I talked to Peyton about that. He said, yeah, he said I feel better than ever. He said I'm having trouble finding a consistent release point again,
Mm.
but again, that's just part of the process of coming back from TJ.
Yeah, I mean the fact that that Tanner McDougal got 21 starts in this year, I feel like was a pretty huge step for him coming back from TJ. That he was able to get those 21 starts in, and it didn't always go as planned, obviously. But did you see the his last start for
I did not.
4 no-hit innings,
Oh
shutout?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Phenomenal. Looked great. Command was really good, and I think he did it all on like 45 pitches or something. Looked
That
fabulous
was
out
the
there.
great. That was the great thing about Kannapolis, especially when Tyler Schweitzer and Jonathan Cannon were there. Every week, you were going to see a couple of really well pitched games because what a great rotation: Schweitzer, Cannon, McDougal, Murphy, Schultz, Batista, Paulette. A couple of those guys were going to shine every week.
Yeah, that was the tough thing for Kannapolis is you also had Drew McDaniel, who had like the first half of the season until he got beamed in the back of the head by his catcher on a throw to
Mm-hmm.
second base. Before that, he looked phenomenal. Um,
I forgot Mason Adams. Yeah.
Mason Adams, Shane Murphy. Um, I mean, just so much starting pitching that you could piggyback those guys one off of the other. I mean, there's so much pitching there, and every single one of them. I mean, Shane Murphy, the guy throws like 85% strikes for crying out loud. You know, and
Yeah.
undrafted, ridiculous.
Easy.
Yeah,
And so what do? They move Schweitzer and Adams and Cannon up, and here comes Seth Keener, and next year Grant Taylor.
Lucas
Two
Gordon.
of their top draft picks, big arms. It keeps on going. So kudos to the White Sox, absolutely, for drafting these guys. And now let's just see if they can develop them.
Yeah, that
And then Juan Corello is
oh,
there also, who they traded for. I'm sorry, he was in Winston.
yeah, he's in Winston, but still,
Batista's there.
yeah, Aldrin Batista, yeah, which his last outing was meh, but I mean, they can't all be great starts, especially in
It's
A ball. You
minor leagues. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, the Seth Keener made the last start for the Ballers, and I think he threw one hit, three innings, maybe three and a third or something like that.
Three or four shutout innings. Yeah, yeah. Very nice.
Yeah, and Lucas Gordon also looked awesome, and
Right.
yeah, I mean, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Grant Taylor as well. I mean, there's just so much so much pitching depth, and when we talked about was the development going to that's the question.
Right.
You've,
That's
we've
the
seen the
million dollar
arms.
question. That's the million dollar question is when they get these guys to the big leagues. A lot of them are going to get hurt. We sure saw that this year, but there's enough quantity that let's get them to see if they can get them to the big leagues.
So Jacob Gonzalez, first round draft pick, fourth
Yeah.
prospect in the system. Uh, what did you think of what you saw from him so far this season, or for the remainder of the rest of the last month of the season or whatever it was?
Well, I think a lot of people thought his season was kind of underwhelming. He didn't really do much at the plate. Um, I thought he was really solid defensively, and I thought he got better as the season went on defensively. He's got a nice arm, uh, but I just totally discount um, the 30 or so games that he played, if that many. Let's see where he's at like a month into next season. I mean, he's got a big pedigree, really highly regarded. People were shocked that he slipped down to 15. So I cut him some slack. Yeah, it wasn't the best start, not what you wanted to see, but uh, the potential's still got to be there.
Yeah, I mean it's like when
What do you
you
think?
see Tim Elko what he did this year, and last year I think he hit like 215. So that's how you got to temper your expectations when these guys come straight out of college and start playing. They go to Arizona, you know, they play a long season, go to playing in college World Series games, and then they are then Jacob Gonzalez is playing for Team USA, and then he gets drafted, and then he goes to Arizona, and then he flies to Kannapolis, and he's going all over the place, longest season of his entire life, and people are surprised when he doesn't, he's not out there, jacking dingers every night. You got to give the guy some time to breathe here and let him assimilate a little bit to the life, I think.
Yeah, no question. And I
So
can't wait. I'm loving your last question. I'm curious what you think about this guy.
yeah, that's I want to finish this off on a this he is a curiosity,
Yeah.
and he's taken the internet by storm. The tweet that I put out of his first hit, stolen base and run scored, has 1.2 million views. A guy in Japan took the video and tweeted it on his account, and it's got over 1 million views in Japan. So this tweet's been seen by like 2.5 million people on Twitter. Um,
Yeah.
Riku Nishida, do you think that he is a novelty, or do you think that he can come up in the system? Do you think he has? Do you think his skill set is something that is good enough or worthy enough of the team to move around?
One of my biggest regrets this year in terms of covering minor league baseball is I never had the opportunity to ask his manager, Pat Leland, about Rikui's game and how it's going to translate as he moves up to higher levels and ultimately, could it ever be a major leaguer? It's hard to see it. Um, First couple of games that I saw him play, I mean, when I say slap hitter, literally,
Yeah.
it's like it's not 50 miles an hour off the bat. He's just slapping at the ball and then trying to beat the ball to first base. Um, so I don't know. You know, he's got great bat control. I saw, and he's just so much fun to watch. He had like two or three of these slap hits. Then I saw him trying and push a bunt Instead of just trying to kill it between the pitcher and third base, he tried to push it by the third base bag. And had he done it, he would have come into had an easy double. There's no way the third baseman was going to get it, but it just went foul. And then I saw him with no one on and 2 outs, and so he swings hard and hits a triple. I don't know what to. I don't think it translates to the big leagues, but again, it's just a month into his first year, so maybe they get rid of the slap hitting, or I don't know. What do you think? Do you think there's anything there? It sure is entertaining. I love watching him
That's the
and
thing.
talking to him.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah,
And it's like I said, it's like a curiosity. It's we've seen guys with that, kind of, sort of, at least with that kind of approach, but mostly, obviously, in Japanese ball. And obviously, like, you don't want to compare him to Ichiro, because like, that's ridiculous
yeah.
expectations for literally anybody. Um, the thing is, he does little things that need to be done. I just don't know if there's enough umph there to get him to the point. It's like
Right.
the kind of thing that people worried about with Madrigal. Whether you know his ball, the line drives that he's going to hit, are they going to get over the infielders in Major League Baseball? I don't know.
Right.
I guess we just have to. I mean, obviously, we just wait and see. But it's certainly uh, a fun problem to have. Like, I'm interested in watching it, but I mean, as far as having an answer, who knows?
I tell you, he would be a great weapon to have on your bench because he's the fastest guy probably in low A. You've got this great speed on the bench, or if you've got a runner on third and less than 2 outs, and you just need somebody to make contact, you can send him up there, and he can do it. But unfortunately, I suspect he's a luxury that no one can afford on their bench. Um, but regardless, he's going to be a lot of fun to watch these next couple of years.
Yeah, it will at least be fun. That's one thing I can say about it. Thank you so much for accepting my invite and coming and hanging out tonight. And we just plowed through a ton of stuff. Thanks for sticking with me through it. Uh, your socials, where can people find your work?
Uh,
Hit them with
Triple
it.
A Jeff, yeah, Triple A Jeff, spell out triple, and cover the nights and occasionally a little bit of Kannapolis and Winston Salem when things get rough here in Charlotte. But I've had a blast. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for all your help during the season. You do a great job, and you really helped me a lot.
Oh, no problem. Your written work, do you putting that up at FutureSox?
Yeah, we FutureSox.net. I think eventually it'll be FutureSox.com. It's FutureSox.net. We've got a lot of really good, a lot of knowledgeable people at FutureSox. So it's really worth checking out the website and reading some of the other guys. James Fox does a killer job on draft picks, and he's got some real insight into what's going on with the White Sox. And like I said, Elijah Evans was all over Birmingham this year. Some great reads, some great interviews.
Yeah, and for listeners slash watchers, if you guys aren't Patreon for FutureSox, you're doing yourself a disservice. All of Elijah's interviews, slightly longer than the stuff that you see elsewhere, is available to the Patreon subscribers. So go check that out. Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it. My name is Ian Eskridge, at iEskridge on Twitter. You can find all of our stuff at Daily White Sox on Twitter, whitesoxdaily.substack.com for written content. You can search us on Facebook and YouTube to find this stream. You can also find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for coming and listening. Thanks for watching. For myself and my co-host for the evening, Mr. Jeff Cohen here, thank you so much. You guys have a great night, and we will see you guys soon. Thanks.